What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. As always, this video, I got the Alexa going on in the background. This video is brought to you by NutriBio Supplements, Crystals, Bikinis, and BioLongevity Labs. Check out my link tree in the description box. That'll have the codes so you can get discounts on all those sponsors. That's where you can find my coaching application if you're interested in that, where you can find me on Instagram. All that good stuff. So, Q&A episode. Got a bunch of questions. As always, I take them on Instagram. You guys can find me at jperch. I'm going to dive right into it. Let's see. Do sugar alcohols affect your physique, like sugar-free foods and beverages? Short answer is no. I think, this isn't something that should be used or abused very close to a contest. Like if you're worried about it, if it causes you digestive issues, anything like that, 1 or 2 weeks from a show, like all of that stuff can get pulled. But like if you're having like diet drinks during the prep, sugar-free gum, one, it's not going to really change how you look unless it's causing like stomach issues and then it manifests as distension. That will definitely like throw off your physique if your midsection is bigger than it should be. But it's not going to prevent fat loss, or even mask fat loss. So no, not a big deal. I would just say like before getting on stage, you really only want to be putting things into your body that you know are going to make you look as good as you possibly can. It's temporary. And so there's nothing that is worth the risk, in my opinion, especially like the last couple days. Let's see here. So basically, I'm not going to read this word for word. I'm going to kind of paraphrase, but this guy wrote in and said that I'm basically the only person he's ever heard of with a good experience using AOD 9604. AOD stands for anti-obesity drug. It's a fat loss peptide. He said that basically everyone else that he's ever heard of using it didn't get anything from it. He feels like, based on what he knows about it, he felt like it was almost like a poor man's growth hormone. But he's heard me say that it absolutely made a difference. Um, so I will say that it absolutely did make a difference to my physique, and it was site injected into my most stubborn areas, which for me was my right love handle and kind of the upper outer part of my right glute. There's been many times where I dieted, um, and that left love handle was like fat free. My left cheek had lines and striations all the way across it. And then my right side, for whatever reason, looks like it's still 4 weeks out, or there's still plenty of room to go. Now I could tell you guys that it made a difference, but subjectively, what good does that really do? So I actually have some pictures to show you the difference. And this is a comparison of before I started using it and then after I had used it for 2 weeks. Now, in this 2 week period, there's the diet's going on, the cardio is going on, there's other drugs in play. I can tell you that the only change that I made during these 2 weeks to the whole plan was that I was site injecting this AOD into my right love handle and right glute. And I will show you guys the difference. I don't think there's much of a body weight difference here either. I think it's like maybe 6 pounds, or 5 pounds of a difference. Let me see. Share. So green trunks is before I started using it. And you can see right here, this is kind of what I was talking about. This always usually just kind of hangs around. And this right glute always ends up more fat looking than my left glute. You could see like um, my hamstring tie-in is better. There was already starting to be like a little bit of some lines here, and it doesn't look like there's much left on this side in terms of the love handle. So then blue trunks, drug wise, cardio wise, no changes. 2 weeks of putting the AOD right here and right here. I was using 500 micrograms per day before fasted cardio. And if I didn't have machine cardio, I was doing a pretty extensive morning walk fasted. This is 2 weeks later. So you see the difference. My right love handle pretty much completely disappeared to where you see it now almost like sucked in and tapered. And it surpasses the left one. Now it looks like the left love handle has more fat on it. And you see the difference overall in the glutes, especially like kind of up here in this stubborn area. So I'll show you again. I know that most people just listen to these. So, but I wanted to show you guys that it's not just me thinking that something works or saying that something works. Visually, there was quite a big difference if you look at the spot where I was using it. So yeah, great experience. I think he went on to ask if I would continue to use it or had plans to use it in prep. I do. I honestly, after seeing that, I will probably never do a contest prep without it. I will say this, like anything else, I think the response that you get or the fact that there is such a variance or varied response from one person to another, I think a huge part of that boils down to the quality of the product. So I bought those peptides, or I bought that peptide specifically from three different sources. I'm not going to say who. If you guys want to send a direct message, maybe I'll tell you, maybe I won't. But I read a lot about this, and it seemed like the people that liked it loved it. And then there was tons of people that thought it was total garbage. So I'm like, you know what? There's a reason that some faction of people really advocate for it. So let me buy it from three different sources, and I'm going to send samples out of all three to get tested. Two of the three products that I sent out came back like no active compound. So completely bunk. One of the products came back spot on, even a little bit overdosed with very, very high purity. So I used that product only, and then I stocked up on a bunch more and used it the whole prep, 500 micrograms into that spot. And it was the best the right side of my lower body has ever looked. So yeah, I will absolutely continue that with peptides and stuff. I haven't always, unless someone has expressed that they have the budget or they're willing to kind of experiment with all the different peptides that I used in my prep, like that they want to do that, then I'll write up a protocol that outlines it. But it's not one of these things that I think is necessarily do or die for most people, especially that was a stubborn area for me. A lot of the guys, in general, I think after you've been bodybuilding for a while, you kind of distribute your fat pretty evenly. So I also don't let my guys in the off season that I know compete. I don't let them get super fat where they have love handles and stuff. So, but definitely it's something I will continue to use. And I've even thought like maybe I'll start the first half of next prep on that same 500 microgram dose. And then double it and do 1,000 micrograms, like maybe the final 8 weeks or something like that, because more is more, right? Like anything else. You know what? I'm going to go back because this guy asked a really good question. This same guy asked a really good question a couple of weeks back that I didn't get to because at the time I didn't have the full context and I didn't want to get on here and sound like a doofus. But he had asked, he said that he had listened to a podcast with Chris Tuttle where Chris had talked about with some of his biggest pros or most successful bodybuilders that he absolutely uses like down periods, cruises, and he felt like that almost allowed them to break through plateaus and gain tremendous amounts of size in a year or a short amount of time. Um, and he kind of asked like, what do I think of that? And do I think like down periods are needed? And I hadn't heard that podcast up to that point. So I wasn't going to speak on what Chris said without knowing what Chris said. So then I went and listened to it. And the way that he described it basically is just like, at a certain point, all of his guys cruise, and he's pretty conservative with how, with the numbers or how he goes about the cruise. And in general, how do I feel about that? I think that that is the way. I think that totally makes sense. I mean, I would be a fool to say that Chris Tuttle, who has all this coaching experience, tons of pro card wins, national overall winners, pro show winners, Olympia level guys. He was a pro bodybuilder himself. I would be a fool to say that what he says has no merit. Chris has had an enormous impact on me as a person, as an athlete, and as a coach. So there's always a lot of value to be taken from the things that Chris says, especially when he's relaying some of his experiences. But this is one, you guys have heard me talk about being aggressive with doses. Um, I'm sure I've even said at certain points, like, people have asked if your health is really good or your labs are really good. Do you need to cruise? And I'm sure I've said there are no rules. It's not totally necessary, but I'll explain that. So I think in terms of, I know that the science says that so let me backpedal here. For a long time, it was the belief like, to kind of resensitize your androgen receptors. You needed to either come down to a cruise, or even a lot of old school guys would come completely off, which is kind of, I think we realize now that's almost a detrimental way to do it, like just for your overall quality of life and health. Um, Especially if you've made the choice and commitment to be like, okay, I'm on drugs and I'm a competitive bodybuilder. Like coming all the way off is just silly, I think, at this point. Um, but that was the belief, like you would reset your androgen receptors. As time went on, like, science kind of proved the longer you're on and the more you use, the androgen receptor actually upregulates. So in theory, or by this logic, you would get more results the more you take and the longer you're on, which I think does make sense. The bigger you are, the more androgen receptor you have and the more drugs that you're going to take to be bigger. Um, and the less down period that you're going to take so that there's not a big step back from that top end level of muscularity. However, this is kind of my stance on it. I think the amount that you use in your down period is contextual. Right now, I'm using more on a cruise than I ever have before. However, it was still basically a 75% reduction from what I was using. So that would be like the equivalent of someone that on a blast was using 1,000 milligrams and then they came down to 250 milligrams. That's basically what I did on a percentage scale. Um, that was also done with the idea that I got blood work done 2 times post show, 2 weeks immediately post show, and then 9 weeks post show. So, like, kind of the end of the post show rebound cycle. Both times they were exceptional, like the two best sets of blood work that I've ever gotten. And my labs have always been good. And this was the best. So, blood pressure was good. So, it was almost like, man, do I even need to cruise at all? And I just in my own personal experience, I came to the realization like, okay, if I'm trying to this year take the biggest leap in muscularity that I ever have, I should probably keep a little bit more in to set up a better starting point for the actual off season. But also I felt like I needed a down period, a cruise, because although the androgen receptor might upregulate, right, on paper or in theory or in science, the androgen receptor is not real life, or the only thing that's happening, better said. Um, so what I mean by that is your appetite, your mindset, your mentality, your excitement for the process, the health of your connective tissue. Do you feel super beat up in the gym? Do you not look forward to going to the gym? Are you absolutely tired of pinning? Have you been eating so much food on this push that you are just sick of food and your gut and your psyche can't handle another week of trying to push crazy amounts of food? Um, have you gotten too soft and you just need to kind of cruise and use it as an opportunity to like clean up from a body fat perspective? I think there are so many reasons and so many applications and so many benefits to a lowered period or cruise or whatever you want to call it. I think calling it a health phase is the dumbest fucking shit ever. Um, that is one of those like hard, controversial opinions that I'm sure the dorks on Discord will have something to say about. But I just think that's silly. Like if we're talking about pursuing enhanced competitive bodybuilding, like yeah, I've even made the comment, I'm healthy on cycle. But like to think that you're all of a sudden, if you weren't healthy on cycle and then you just lower your drugs, oh, in 6 weeks, that makes me healthy. Like, I just think it's silly verbiage. I don't like it. I think cruise makes total sense. Um, and I think, again, depending on your genetics and how much a cruise is for you, you can not only maintain what you have, I think you can make progress. And like I've talked about, especially if you're kind of cleaning up your body fat percentage as well, like you're probably going to feel pretty good about how you look. So, long story short, yes, I think eventually the most healthy, uh, risk tolerant, and willing bodybuilder are still going to run into reasons where a cruise would be beneficial, whether it's one reason or another. Absolutely. With holidays coming up, how do you tell clients to approach food, training, overall life balance? Um, this is a good question. So there's definitely been some different approaches I've taken over the years, and my coaching has evolved. The way that I manage relationships has changed. And the simplest way that I can answer this is that I think that you should do whatever makes you feel good about you. And that the answer to that probably lies in your expectations for yourself and how big your goals are. So if you want to be the most jacked dad at soccer practice, I don't think that you should skip any family gathering to go to the gym. I don't think you should skip any family meals during the holiday period. And I think balance around the holiday season should be at an all-time high. I think it should be family first. And that includes the food, man. Like, if it adds to the experience that you get to sit down and have, dinner and a couple of Christmas cookies with your daughter or something like that, like have the fucking cookies. Um, if you're a 28-year-old dude, single, no kids, and you consistently tell me or other people or even just yourself that you want to be a pro bodybuilder or you want to be the best bodybuilder that you possibly can. I've been in that position most times around the holiday season. And so for that answer for me in that situation has what has made me feel best is being on plan. And so I will, many times like Christmas is a big deal in my family and we have a big family and we have one of my aunts hosts our big, huge, crazy family every year on Christmas. And it's a big Christmas party. And there's tons of cooking, tons of food, big dinner spread, every dessert under the sun. Um, and so many years I just brought a, 6-pack bag with 3 or 4 Tupperwares of my on plan meals. And it meant following the plan, like staying on plan. I'm happy to be there in person and have the in-person experience of spending quality time with all my family members. But like my rationalization of that is I have big goals, and also like it's not taking away from anyone else's experience what I choose to put in my mouth. There has been other times where I do the exact same thing, but I bring three Tupperwares. And then whenever everyone sits down for dinner, I have dinner. And then when everyone has desserts, I have a couple cookies. And then, that's usually, I set it up so that's usually my last meal. But then there's been times where maybe dinner was a little early, and in 3 hours, I have, my next on plan meal. Um, Another aspect of this, besides like what your goals are, like big picture or long term, the obvious one is like, what are your immediate goals? If you're in contest prep, then like I'm going to have a personal individual conversation with that client. So if that person has been with me for years, we've brought in proper stage conditioning to the stage before, especially if it's like multiple times. And being that it's like, November, December, um, like if they're 16 or 14 weeks out from a spring show or something, I will still probably say, hey, replace one of your on plan meals with a meal at Christmas or whatever the case is. I'll probably tell the person not to eat like an asshole. Don't binge your face off. Um, but it's not the end of the world. It's not a big deal. So it just comes down to the individual person, their psychology, and like what the context is. What are your goals? How far from your goals are you, both in terms of like level and duration? Are you, you know, 6 weeks out from doing a show in February? That's probably not the time to be uh, ripping through Christmas dessert. So, what do you think of Dorian saying he only used 3 ampules a week of gear at most during his career? I love Dorian, man. I love a lot of the guys, from the other generations, and I'm not looking to accuse anyone of anything, or um, I'm not looking to ruffle any feathers. The last thing that I need is Lee Priest ripping me a new one publicly on Instagram or something. But I will just say this: I think that um, almost all the guys that we see that have ever been around that level of muscularity or size, there's really no big tricks or secrets. Everyone kind of lands around the same range. Um, and if I didn't have like detailed, serious notes, the way that you guys have seen me take, like, whether you watched any of the rebound or prep videos, like every single thing is super detailed for me. Um, with that said, I didn't start doing that at the beginning of my career. So if you asked me right now, what my 2017 off-season cycle looked like, I might I might not really have a great idea at all. Um, and then God forbid you ask me in 20 years what my 2017 off-season cycle looked like, I might be way the fuck off. I will say this. I've heard Dorian say this before, where it's like, an ampule test and an ampule parabolin or whatever he says. And then recently I've heard him in an interview say, the off season was like around 2 or 2.5 grams, and as much GH as he could afford used every other day so that he would get like a bolus. Um, so I think it's just difficult to say what is what. I'm trying to be PC about it here. I'll say this: I don't think that there's really anybody like at superhuman levels of size that are using cruise amounts of gear. I'll just leave it at that. What did you think of the Olympia, Mexico, and Prague? Olympia, I thought that I might have talked about this. I don't want to just assume that everyone watches my videos. So, the Olympia, For many of the guys that I'm like personal fans of, I was a little disappointed. I'm a big Samson fan, and he to me kind of represents um in all aspects like what Mr. Olympia is, especially like his physique. And then next close would be Andrew. I was blown away by Andrew. So Andrew looked incredible. I thought Hottie was good, not great. Um, I don't necessarily love the winner's look in general. It's hard for me to relate to that look. Um, as you know, with me being like a taller guy and that winner being a much shorter guy, I think that he just has a look about him that looks like it's like, again, I don't want to make any accusations. I don't know, but he looks like he's just like pumped full of drugs. It just looks like oily and watery and balloony. And there's just not much detail anywhere other than like in his glutes and the back double. Um, I think a lot of the body parts are less than desirable or less than proportionate to the rest of the physique. I don't think the physique flows very well. I don't think his midsection, other than it like him being able to vacuum, I don't think it's very good. I think he almost the fact that he can vacuum almost prevents us from thinking that he would look similar to Nick, I think. Hottie's a similar height, but Hottie has a really good set of abs. Derek doesn't have a really good set of abs. His legs were much, much improved. I will say that, especially from the front, they're much improved. Um, but also like his arms are not good, frankly. They looked like they were jimmied to me. Um, which oddly enough also like there was no peak either, so there was just no detail or peak, which is just not a good combination. um so to me, like I think about it, and I've been to Olympias and I've been to big shows, um and I know how different it is. So like, Derek getting that win, I often think to myself like he must have looked way better in person than what we saw as fans. um I kind of also I know, he looks good in pictures and stuff, but like when he's on stage, it's just not. Again, I don't know if maybe I'm biased because I'm a taller guy and these guys are shorter, but um, I would assume that Martin must look way better in person than he does like on the stream. Because I'm never like super blown away with how he actually looks on stage. The Instagram pictures and stuff are like mental, and I know that he's very round, but I'm never like super blown away with him. Um, Mexico. So the Mexico, I thought the lighting was terrible. The background was terrible, of course. I don't know what any of these fucking guys are doing. I don't know how anyone that's in a position of power like looks at the way that Mexico or Prague looked and said, "Yeah, that's good. That's what we're going to go with." Um, Tonio was an awesome winner. I thought Tonio um, looked awesome at the Olympia, and then was a deserving winner in Mexico. Reagan, I guess, was second at Mexico. I was a little disappointed with him for the Olympia, and then despite the lighting or whatever else was going on, I thought he looked good in Mexico. Sean Carrito looked insane at the Olympia, and then I don't think he looked very good in Mexico, although he was third. So again, I'm sure these guys look wild in person, but I can only base it off what I see. Prague, I thought Samson was much better, but it was obvious because he's had like weeks to fill up and still was kind of a shell of himself. I mean, I know they said that they had gotten him back to 300 pounds, but it just doesn't, it's not going to look the same when you rush it back on. Um, and Martin beat him there. It's tough to tell because the backdrop was the same color as all the white guys, and the lighting and the stream were terrible. I saw some like funny angled pictures of Martin that looked like he was on the money nails conditioning wise. So I can see why he would have beat Samson then, which is a big result for him. I mean, man, like just a year ago, we were talking about Samson being the best bodybuilder in the world, and Martin being stoked to be fourth. So for him to surpass him is a big result for him. I don't know the guy's name. Handsome young white dude, good head of hair, crazy structure, like vacuum front double, big legs, big biceps. I think his name is like Juan or something, or Yon or something. I apologize to the young man because I don't know his name off the top of my head, but I actually posted a picture of him on Instagram. I reshared a picture of him from the show, and he's exceptional. His back is a little bit behind, and he's just so young. I think he's in his 20s. Like, so for the back to match and to just grow like a big structured back on a tall bodybuilder like that, it just takes years. It just takes time. So I think eventually he almost looks like um, the idea or archetype that I have in my head about what Mr. Olympia is, and not dissimilar to Reagan. Like I can remember feeling that way about a young Reagan. Like I thought he would be Mr. Olympia. How was Canada? It looked like Brad was on the money. Brad was on the money. So the bodybuilding experience from being in Canada, in terms of being with Brad the whole time, um, peeking him literally like by the meal, trying some different things, doing some different things with him, seeing the way that it worked out in person. Um, the show venue and it being an expo, it being near Pure Muscle and Fitness Gym, seeing and running into like a bunch of pros that I've looked up to for a long time. Um, the show itself, like Brad being on stage, the lighting was exceptional. The backdrop was exceptional. I think the judges did a very good job of being present and aware. They're not like really, I've been at shows, especially like kind of in the Northeast here in the States, where half the judging panel is just scrolling their phone and not even looking at the competitors. And it's like, well, what are you getting paid for? I sat right behind the judges. Ian was actually one of the judges, which was cool. I met him, very nice. And they're all just very aware. They take it very seriously. And I thought the show ran great in terms of coaching, trying to peak someone with food and other variables based on time. It started right on the money, both prejudging and finals. So anyone that's listening from Canada, any of my clients that are from Canada, man, I would not hesitate to go back or bring clients back to that show. I would go back to it in a heartbeat. Um, it's is always a trip to me. It's a very small thing, but it's always a trip to me. Like when people mention that they watch the videos or watch the podcast, I think that's awesome. It's always like very humbling and kind of a funny thing. Like I ran into Sam that watches the show. Um, Jason, I think his name is, that watches the show. Jackson that watches the show. He's a friend of Brad's. Um, man, all these guys, like just meeting them in person after maybe like interacting with them online only was very cool. The gym was cool. It's probably the biggest or most vast gym that I've ever been in. And there's something there for everyone. I'll say it like that. I think there are quite a few swings and misses in terms of the equipment selection, but also there's a lot of home runs. So there's something there for everyone. Like nobody is leaving that gym disappointed. How was the rest of Canada? Oh man, I'm back to being home, back to being in the States. Um, I had my flight there, so I flew out of Tampa. Had to fly into Montreal as a layover, and then fly to Toronto for the show. Montreal, the airport at least, was a dump. Uh, the people there stink. I don't think that deodorant is a big part of the culture there. Um, and the people, at least there in that airport, were incredibly rude. Had had I had some of these interactions at a Publix or somewhere on the street, somebody would have gotten smacked in the mouth because these people were fucking rude. Um, I'm not gonna go into the rest of it. That's all I'm gonna say. Do you carry different mindsets or thoughts based on what body part you're training? You know, this is an interesting question. When this came in earlier in the day, I kind of read it and I was like, oh, that, whatever. And then I thought about it and I'm like, you know what? That's actually a really thoughtful question. Like, is your mentality different as you approach training based on what you're training? And as I gave it some thought, I've realized that it definitely does. The mentality that I go into the gym with is different based on what I'm training. What I like to listen to, what I even like to wear is different. So it's definitely it definitely varies. One thing that I will offer, uh, that might be beneficial for people, um, and because I've heard this a lot too. I've heard it from just any bodybuilder that you speak to. I've heard it as feedback from clients after I make a program. People will be like, "Oh man, like I hate to train arms, like as an arm day, or man, arm day is so boring." And I have said that, and I've used to feel that way. And guess what? It was very obvious in my physique that I felt that way. Now, I don't have exceptional arms by any means. They still absolutely need to improve. But I would say within the last like 18 months or so, I've made it a point to hype myself up and gear myself up to enjoy arm day. I go into it like, it's not the same type of mentality as training legs. I would be lying if I said it's like the same kind of thought process or preparation process as training legs. But also like I certainly don't dread it. I look forward to just getting a nasty pump and training arms and feeling like my arms are big for once. I think how you think about something and like how much you enjoy it, how much you look forward to it, how much you even like visualize it prior to training, whether you're at work or school or whatever else. I think that plays a big role in the performance and like how it manifests as that body part growing. So I would recommend to people that feel that way to try to shift your mentality about it going into it, especially if it's a body part that needs to improve. If everything is locked in as a young bodybuilder, would you push drugs early and then maintain? I mean, yeah, if I could go back and do it all over again, um, or for example, like if I could take someone right now as like a 21-year-old bodybuilder that was all in, um, their budget wasn't necessarily a problem or like they weren't just skating by. Um, and like from a lifestyle perspective, they're all in. Like, they're not out partying. They're getting good sleep. They're not in a shitty relationship that's holding them back or anything like that. Um, truly everything else is locked in. And let's say this 21-year-old has some good genetics and looks like they have like some good potential too. Training is awesome. They love to train as like the number one thing. They already love to train and they love to train hard and take it there. Um, yeah, like if that was me or if I could redo it, I would push drugs harder earlier. Um, Theoretically, when your health is like so much more resilient. Like I'm pushing drugs now in my 30s. Luckily, I have a good genetic health profile, but like I know a lot of people that wouldn't be the case. Like, you know, trying to there are guys now in their 30s that are on TRT and it causes problems. So absolutely, I think if you can push drugs early, um, it makes sense. Especially, I think if you can afford and source good GH early on, it'll actually make your year go further. So those top end numbers don't need to be like reckless or risky. Um, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Stu is a good example of this. Like Stu competed as like a no name amateur kind of, I guess, light heavyweight maybe or heavyweight, um, as like a 24-year-old or something. And then within 2 years, um, he was Mr. USA as a super heavyweight and a high placing pro. And, so now he's not even 30 yet. I don't even think he's 30. And he's at a point where he really has all the muscle size that his physique needs. Um, and so he's at a point now where at 28 years old or whatever he is, yeah, he can hold that tissue on way less drugs, especially off season wise, especially like to me, I think off season is when it makes most sense to try to push the envelope because growing new tissue is way harder than holding on to tissue. And most of the drugs or the idea in prep with taking many of the drugs is like simply cosmetic. It's not like necessarily anabolic. They are, of course, they're anabolic steroids. Don't get me wrong, but like I think in terms of taking big doses to grow, that should be in the off season. And so like if you've done that early on, and especially not to say that it's easier, but if you're like a shorter guy, you can probably reach what like a maxed out level of muscularity that your physique needs to be competitive or complete earlier in your career. Like for tall guys, it's just going to take a long time. There's just a bigger frame to fill out, and it's just going to take more years. But I think from what I've seen, the guy that asked this is not only young and all in, but he looks like he's like a little bit of a shorter stature guy. So yeah, like you might be able to race and get there a little bit sooner earlier on in your journey. And then you can have like many years of your prime later on where you don't necessarily need to take tons of stuff. Where do you get your HGH tested? I send everything to Janoshik and Janoshik only. I don't trust anyone else. First cycle, if you were going to run 500 to 600 milligrams a week total, would you do test only or test plus either something like Primo, Mast, or EQ? I think it totally depends on the person. Um, anyone with any type of gyno history, like let's say, it's going to be hard to tell how much someone aromatizes um, as a natural, like preemptively. It's going to be tough to tell, but an easy one would be like if someone has any type of puberty driven gyno, the test only cycle is out for sure. You're going to want something, you're going to want to bias your milligrams more so towards something that doesn't aromatize or something like EQ that will help manage the E2. Um, I don't know. In general, though, like outside of specific health situations, I don't think this matters a ton. And like some of these like lower numbers and things like it's just personal preference. I don't think I don't think it is going to manifest in like a way different look doing 600 milligrams one way or another. Like if you do 400 tests and 200 EQ or 600 tests, I don't think you're going to look much like you may feel different. You may respond different in terms of your sex drive or how you feel in the gym. Like that's what I'm talking about. That's personal preference. Like I don't think you're going to look much different, if at all. All right. This guy wrote in a long one. So maybe wrap it up on this one. Um, Hey, Joe, love the podcast. Thanks for all you do. Just want to give a little extra context around my question about digestive supplements for off season. I work a physically active job and I'm still getting two, sometimes three meals in during my 10 to 11-hour workday. Problem I have run into previously is that once these meals start creeping up in size, it starts to seriously be a detriment on my physical and mental energy. I can't afford to miss a step at work. Curious about things like betaine HCl with pepsin just to help things move. I know oral BPC can be a great help, but I'm trying to keep it cost effective as running oral BPC 3 times a day is going to skyrocket my expenses. And then he writes, I know, get my money right. He's 6'2", 215 pounds. The last few weeks of a cut, and then we'll flip to the off season at the end of November. Calories quickly get into the 5K range in the off season. I asked for like some cycle history, and he's using like pretty minimal amount of drugs. Like I think he said something like 700 mgs total is like a high end for off season. 4 IU's a GH. Um, really struggles when he's trying to push food to get the scale moving. Have gotten up to 5,000 calories a day, and the scale wasn't moving any, if at all. And then he was getting desperate for calories, so he started using less than ideal sources to push past that. But ultimately, fat gain started settling in, and he had to pull back. On the macro side, I've always preferred high carb, moderate protein, moderate fat. With digestion being a major issue, I have always thought it would be counterproductive to go too much past 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Okay, lots of moving parts here. Let's go kind of one by one. Um, okay, first things first, you need to make more money if you're serious about body. Like you saying that, because of your budget, or you even mentioned there was somewhere that he mentioned like personal relationships. He doesn't take as much gear as he would want to. It's like, well, then that's the wrong relationship, and you need to make more money. Um, I don't know where you got this from, but you absolutely don't need to take oral BPC 3 times a day. It's not like taking a digestive enzyme or something. Like I take 1,000 milligrams fasted in the morning, and then that's it. And I'm eating much more than you. I'm using much more than you. Um, and I weigh much more than you. So, and not to put you down, but like just to give you an idea, like there's no reason to take oral BPC 3 times a day. Just take it once in the morning. I think it will go a long way. Um, but also, like a couple times, he mentioned digestion being a major issue. Um, but then he said that like the main issue is that eating a lot of food makes his physical and mental energy bad. Um, so unless he was just leaving out the part where he's like, he never once mentioned like, oh, my stomach was a wreck and I had to pull back. Like it was like, no, he started to use like sugary sources because he didn't have an appetite. And then that's when he got fat. So to me, like, I think you personally need to maybe like figure out um like the difference between digestion issues and you just not being able to, this is going to sound blunt, but like you not being able to handle the things that come along with the goals that you have. So like if you're trying to use drugs and eat in order to pack on size like someone that was a bodybuilder would do, um, one of those costs of doing that is like physically feeling lethargic, mentally feeling lethargic. Like, yeah, dude, like all of us that are trying to eat and pack on size deal with this all the time, all day. Most of the time in the off season, you talk to any one of us that are like actual bodybuilders, like eating the same amount of food every day in an effort to try to put on new muscle tissue. Like most of us could close our eyes and take a nap at any point. So there's just a lot of misalignment here. Like I would say like the physically active job, not making enough money, personal relationship, like all of those things are misaligned with what you're telling me that you want to do in terms of like take drugs, push food, and get big. Like none of those things work for the goals that you have. Um, so like, yeah, like even like you had mentioned, like, taking something like betaine to help things move. Like, what does that mean? Like, if you actually have digestive issues and like you eat a meal and then like you have such distension that your stomach physically hurts, or it's like a rumbling, bumbling mess and you have to race to the bathroom. Like, that's digestive issues. Like, if you eat a big meal in the off season in an attempt to get bigger, and then like your stomach is a little full after the meal, like, yeah, your stomach's going to be full. There's a huge difference between like digestive issues and bloating versus just being full, just your stomach being full. I get this all the time from people. I'm bloated. Like, well, when are you bloated? Immediately following a meal, I feel bloated. No, you feel full. It's a totally different thing. Um, so like, based on what you're giving me, here's an answer for you. Like, do I think that oral BPC or betaine HCl are going to make you feel more physically and mentally alert if you're pushing drugs and pushing a lot of food, enough food to grow as someone that's 6'2"? No, I don't. That's no, you're missing the point. Like, you're taking things that will help like actual stomach issues and hoping that it negates some of the basic side effects that come with eating a lot of food and putting on a lot of muscle. Um, and then on the macro side, I prefer high carb, moderate protein, moderate fat, with digestion being a major issue. I have always thought it would be counterproductive to go too much past 1 gram of protein. I think that's just a good way to stay small. Nobody that's big is only eating 1 gram of protein per pound. So like, you're 215. Um, then bare minimum, I would have you on 300 grams of protein, like bare minimum. Um, and then I would have you on high carb, um, and like little to no fat. Like, if um, part of this idea that you're struggling with is that it feels like your meals are just like sitting in your stomach while you're at work. Why would you have dietary fat in? Even at a moderate level, why would you have dietary fat in? Um, or at the very least, as an idea, like, why would you have any dietary fat in any of the meals that you're going to eat prior or during work? Like, save your dietary fat until your final meal when you're at home. And then, so then the obvious one is like, he also mentioned using retatrutide, and it's like, well, that just doesn't make any sense for somebody that struggles to eat 5,000 calories. Like, again, this is in a bodybuilding sense, and for a big guy like this, 6'2", man, 5,000 calories is not a lot of food. Um, so then, does it make sense to take a GLP that's going to potentially like ruin your appetite or really limit your appetite or slow your gastric emptying, which you've talked about being a problem? No, I don't think it makes sense. So, um, yeah, hopefully that helps. Hopefully, I don't mean to be like too harsh, but just like want to be straightforward about what's being said and the distinction between some of these terms that you're using. Last one, men's physique guy here. I know you say anything under 8 IU isn't worth it. Not true. I would say that bodybuilding doses or bodybuilding results for growth hormone start at 6 IUs, not 8. But I do recommend being part of the 8 IU crew. So just to make that distinction, do you think, just in terms of recovery and longevity, 4 IUs is worth it as a men's physique competitor? I do. I totally do. Men's physique, lifestyle, general wellness, all of those scenarios, 4 IUs is awesome. Like, when I'm done bodybuilding, I'll be on anywhere from 2 to 4 IUs of GH until the day that they bury me to go alongside my TRT. So that's everything, guys. I gotta go eat. I gotta go put down one of these big bodybuilding meals. And so thanks for following along. Thanks to everybody that wrote in questions. And until next time, I am out.